All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?
Hello, and welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast. Today, before we start the show, I would like to bring up some business things that have kind of been on my mind so that you can know where to get more Where Am I to Go. First off, I'd like to talk about the Facebook page at Where Am I to Go podcast. It's on Facebook, and we've been posting some wonderful pictures of some of the places that we've been and some of the adventures that we've had. Not everything that we go and do is made into a podcast, and so we take pictures at different places and post those pictures so that you guys can enjoy some of the different places we've been. Also, I really am interested in listener feedback. I have an email address at whereamiitogopodcast@gmail.com. Again, that is whereamiitogopodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear some of the listeners' comments and some of their ideas of places that might be interesting to visit and go and do. I'm on kind of a limited travel schedule as far as the way that I travel and where I go, but if there's something extremely interesting, I would definitely do my best to build a trip around it. And the last thing, and the latest thing, is that I now have a Patreon account where if you want to hear the podcast early, you can go to Patreon/Loren Alberts, sign up for $3, $5, $10, whatever dollars if you were willing to support what I do and help us with our travel expenses and some of that kind of stuff. I would greatly appreciate it. But what we're going to do is right now I have several podcasts that are banked, I guess you could say. I'm on, I think, number 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there, and I've got close to 35 that I have waiting to go out. I only put out about every week because I want to be able to keep a nice steady stream and not have a point in time when we have to shut down like a lot of other podcasts do for season 1, season 2. I'd like to keep this thing going year round. And I've been traveling quite a bit and have been hitting quite a few interesting places. We've been to a tattoo museum. We've been to the beach and have gone to several tourist attractions there, an underground tour. We did a cannery tour. We've just done all kinds of things, and I would love for you to be able to hear those early. So if you sign up with the Patreon, as soon as my editor Steve gets these things ready to go out, they will be put up on the Patreon page. And again, I would really appreciate your support. Now that I've got those things out of the way, I hope to hear from you, and I hope you keep on listening. And now, let's get on with the podcast. Today, we are in Midwest Wyoming, which is about 30 miles north of Casper. It's an oil field, oil town. I don't know what to say about it. I've never been to Midwest. We are here with Everett at the Salt Creek Museum, which is, I guess it's a oil field museum, but I'm sure seeing a lot of other stuff here. It sits right next to the Midwest Town Hall and the police station, and I thought that it was just a small little building. We come walking up here, and the first thing we see is about a 6-foot piece of wooden water pipe. I have seen little pieces, never a piece that size, and it's sitting right out here on the front as you come on in. And once I get inside, I see oil field stuff, I see Boy Scout stuff, I see license plates from way back in Wyoming history, I see old wash tubs, and this is going to be a fascinating museum. I can tell that already. And Everett is more than eager to come down here and open up. I think that the museum isn't open all the time, but you are on call and will be down here at a moment's call. Is that correct, Everett?
Yep, that is correct. I work full-time, and but there's a number you can call, 307-258-9396, and that rings straight into my cell phone. And if you want to see the museum, if you're standing at the door and call me, I'll be here in 3 minutes. If you want to make an appointment for some day in the future, we can set that up at that time.
That is awesome. I called Everett tonight at 5 o'clock. I was doing a museum in KC, Wyoming, and I called him up at 4:58. I says, I see that you're by appointment. Is there any possibility we can do this tonight? He says, I need to go home and feed my cows. I'll see you at 5:30. So here we are, 5:30 at night. Everett has made his self available, and we are going to go through this museum. I can hardly wait because, like I said, it looks small. I have not walked through it yet, but I think we are in for a treat.
I hope so. I hope so. Like you mentioned, this is the Salt Creek Oil Field Museum. So this is a museum about the Salt Creek oil field. We do have some information on the Teapot Dome oil field, which adjoins this field. And if you know much about your history, you'll know about the Teapot Dome scandal.
Well, tell us about it so that if I don't know my history, I will.
Okay, the Teapot Dome scandal was the biggest scandal, political scandal, to ever hit the United States. And it just about took down a presidency. If President Harding hadn't have passed away from a heart attack, he would have probably been imprisoned like everybody else that was involved. Albert B. Fall was the Secretary of the Interior at the time. And he was as crooked as the day is long. And he and Harry Sinclair made a under-the-table deal to kick everybody out of the Teapot Dome and then lease it only to Sinclair. And anyway, they got found out. And Albert Fall and Sinclair both spent time in prison over the deal.
Now, is Sinclair the same Sinclair that has all the Sinclair dinosaur?
It is. It's the same outfit. Yep.
Okay, and they've got a big refinery here in Wyoming, in Sinclair, Wyoming, which is named after him, I guess.
Yes, it is. There's a Sinclair refinery in Casper also.
So he must have done all right once he got back out of prison.
Once he got out, yeah. They didn't get him for the bribery and all that kind of stuff to trying to get the Teapot Dome. They got him for tax evasion.
Oh.
So he only spent, I think it was 6 months in prison.
Okay.
But Albert Fall also was making deals with another oil man who made the Pan Am Oil Company. And Albert Fall was leasing the petroleum reserves in California to this other fellow. And the other fellow never did spend any time in prison, but they just couldn't prove that he's the one that gave Albert Fall the money.
Now, was the Pan Am Oil Company involved with the Pan Am Airlines also, or
no.
two different companies?
Two different companies, yeah.
Okay.
Two different companies. Pan Am was eventually bought out by Sinclair.
Okay.
And
about what years are we talking about with the Teapot Dome
The
scandal?
Teapot Dome scandal was 1923.
Okay.
And that's when it happened. And the oil field was really getting ramped up about 1910, and so that's when there was a lot of speculation going on, and a lot of these under the table deals started happening about then. 1910 was about the time that the Navy was in the process of converting all of their ships from coal to oil fired. And so there was a big rush to try to get as much oil out of the ground as possible and sell it to the Navy. The Teapot Dome eventually became the Naval Petroleum Reserve number 3. And the two in California were number 1 and number 2. There was also one in Alaska, which was number 4.
Okay, now about that same time, and I'm not sure of my time frames, Rockefeller was big time with monopoly and some of that type of stuff. Now, was he involved in any of this stuff in any way, or was that where the monopolies already broke up, or
no,
where were we at there?
The Rockefeller monopolies were mostly railroads and industry, and whereas the oil industry was kind of separate.
Okay, but what about Standard? Wasn't he Standard or not? I may be all wrong with my history. I don't know. I'm asking questions.
Yes, Rockefeller was Standard Oil.
Okay,
but he wasn't involved here.
Okay.
Stanleyland eventually came into the field, but that was a few years down the road.
Okay.
You know, after the Midwest Oil Company was formed and that type of thing, then Standard came in and started sucking stuff up. Yeah.
Okay. I just wasn't sure kind of timeline how the monopolies and all of that worked in to the whole deal. Now the Teapot Dome scandal, was it a Supreme Court case, or it was where did it go, or how did it evolve?
It went through Congress.
Okay.
And there's congressional hearings and everything like that, and subpoenas, and there's a book out there. I've got a copy of it, but I haven't read all of it, but it's the transcript of all these hearings. And so if you're ever really having a hard time sleeping some night, just get a hold of that book and you'll be asleep in 5 minutes.
It's pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah, it'll hold you right there, for a good 5 minutes. But there's lots of books out there on the Teapot Dome scandal, and I really encourage you to find one and look into that, because it was really a dark time in American political history. The Harding administration was one of the most corrupt administrations there has ever been. Quite a few of his cabinet members and stuff eventually all spent time in prison over just shady deals through that. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And so you said we were at Teapot Dome, and the other oil field was?
We're in Salt Creek Dome.
Oh, we're in Salt Creek. Okay.
Yeah,
and Teapot's next.
Teapot is the next one.
So was Salt Creek involved in the Teapot Dome scandal also? Or?
No, it wasn't. There was a guy who worked for the Midwest Oil Company, saw this coming, and so he did all kinds of research and wrote a book. His name was Harold D. Roberts, and he wrote the book Salt Creek.
And that book was in 1923 or so?
This was written in 1954.
Okay.
But Harold Roberts was out here with the Midwest Oil Company the beginning of time, basically, and he was an attorney for the oil company, and he did all the research about the claims and everything out here, who claimed what, when, and all that kind of thing. And he had it all listed out so that if Fall and Sinclair tried to come in and take this field, which they had planned on doing, he had the legal paperwork to show that, no, they can't just kick everybody out, that some of these claims went back to the 1800s. So he was pretty solid on that.
Okay.
So that's why, a lot of the same people were involved in Teapot Dome as Salt Creek, but the same thing didn't happen at Salt Creek because of Harold D. Roberts.
Okay. Well, that's cool to know.
Yeah.
And so these oil fields, both of these, are they in the same formation?
Basically the Salt Creek oil field sits in the Salt Creek Dome, and the Teapot Dome field sits in the Teapot Dome. Although the Teapot Dome is in the Salt Creek anticline, it's just another dome in the same anticline as what this field is in.
Okay, now explain a dome to me, because I don't really understand that.
Okay, a dome is where the ground was pushed up from underneath, pressure underneath, and it just domes up like a bowl sitting upside down, and that's what the Teapot or the Salt Creek Dome particularly looks like. And as it domes up, then the pressure and everything like that just pushes all the oil from around up to the top of this dome.
So they're shallow wells then?
Yes, yeah. Our average production depth here at Salt Creek is only 1,700 feet.
Wow.
And we do have operating wells that are only 900 feet deep.
Really?
Yeah, so it's a really shallow field here. Teapot Dome is a little deeper because it's on the anticline.
Okay.
If I could draw you a picture of how the anticline runs, it's farther down slope of how this whole thing just lifted up.
But really productive fields.
Teapot Dome never did produce as well as Salt Creek. Salt Creek at one time was the largest light oil producing field in the world.
Okay.
And the Teapot Dome never did produce as well. I don't believe it ever really had the potential to produce like Salt Creek did. But it did very well, although it was shut in from 1923 to 1978.
You mean shut in?
Yeah, I mean the Navy shut it off.
Oh, because it was a reserve.
Because it was a reserve, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, they just shut it in, and no production was made during those times.
And Teapot Dome, the same thing?
That is Teapot Dome.
Oh, that is Teapot Dome.
Yeah.
Salt Creek was still operating.
Salt Creek is running wide open. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All this time, Salt Creek's been running wide open. Salt Creek is still today. Salt Creek is making a little over 11,000 barrels of oil a day, and the peak production was in 1925, and that was 157,000 barrels of oil a day.
Wow.
It was a screamer. It was a screamer. Up until about 1920, pretty much every well that was ever drilled out here was a gusher.
Huh.
I mean, they just blew.
And now, is this a really old oil field, or?
This is a pretty old oil field. The Discovery well was drilled in 1908 by the Dutch company. And the Stock boys, Daddy Stock and James Stock, are the ones that drilled it. And that was a Discovery well in 1908. They had drilled one in 1906 and missed the first Wall Creek formation by 100 feet because the hole went crooked and they couldn't get it back. So yeah, it's 112 years old.
And it's still pumping oil.
And we're still making oil, yeah.
Cool.
And we're under a CO2 flood now, where we're actually pressurizing the formation back to where it was before it was ever drilled into. And so all the wells out here flow again now.
Wow.
Whereas they were pumped from the 20s up until about 2004, 2005, when they started injecting CO2. They were pumping the wells, all of them out here, all 5,000 of them.
5,000?
There's about 5,000 wells in this field, yes.
In the Salt Creek field?
In Salt Creek alone. Salt Creek's 5 miles wide and 9 miles long.
Wow.
There's a lot of wells out here.
That's a lot of wells.
Yeah.
And Teapot Dome, same type of scenario?
No, they don't have near as many wells out there. There's the central part of the dome is pretty well drilled out, but I don't think they have more than about 1,500 wells.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Boy, that's just a lot of pumps.
A
lot of maintenance. They must have a pretty good crew running around.
Yeah.
Taking care of things.
Yeah, there is. There's miles and hundreds of miles of pipe in the ground and wells to take care of and everything.
Wow. Yeah, it kind of amazes me. I always knew Midwest was someplace close to Casper. I thought it was a little suburb of Casper, but being where it is, I'd never driven out this way to see anything.
Yeah.
Okay, now you got a shovel up here with a handle on it. It's about 12 foot long.
Okay.
That's for digging a deep ditch.
Yeah. These two actually went together, and they're called the banjo and a spoon. And these were used to dig power pole holes.
Okay.
Before they had big digger trucks and stuff like that. These guys would stand up there and dig a hole in the ground and scoop the dirt out with that. And in the 20s, when they were out here building power lines, this is what they used to put them in with.
Wow. That is really cool.
Yeah, this handle here used to be that long also.
Oh, so the digger shovel was 12 feet long. So they put them things down that deep.
Yeah.
I did not realize that. Had to be some tough buggers back in the day,
that's right.
didn't they?
Yeah.
I'm sure that the soil is just all soft and sandy too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite the deal there.
Yeah. Mostly the soil out here is blue shale. And so it's a little tough to dig through, trust me.
And then you've got a bunch of pictures here on the wall. Was there a refinery here?
No, this was a light plant. The Midwest Oil Company built a light plant to power the field. This is the first fully electrified oil field in the world.
Oh, really?
And Midwest Oil Company built this power plant, and it was gas-fired steam turbines. Okay. So the gas that was produced from the field went out to the light plant and was burned to make steam to turn the turbines. The turbines were turned to make electricity to pump the oil and get the gas out of the ground to fire the power plant. And so it was kind of a almost self-sufficient thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say almost perpetual motion.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so how did they separate the gas from the oil? You're talking natural gas, of course.
Natural gas.
And so they were able to separate the two as it was coming out of the well?
In big tanks. These
Okay.
all these wells pumped into big tanks, and they just took the gas. The gas would float to the top, and they just suck the gas off the top, and then skim the oil out of the middle of the tank and ship it down the pipeline.
Okay, and what happened to the power plant?
The reservoir silted in, and so it wouldn't hold enough water to be able to run the steam generators, and so they shut the power plant in, and then we hooked into the regional power system.
Okay.
Pacific Power.
Huh. And so is the building still standing?
The building is still standing. Yeah, and it's a gorgeous building. I mean, you can just it's just gorgeous. Of course, the stacks aren't there. Most of the windows are broke out. The rancher owns it right now, and he uses it for a loafing shed and hay storage.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
but they've got pictures here of when it was up and running and the turbines and all of that kind of stuff. Man, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Little bit of history there.
Yeah. They formed a power company. Also, the Midwest Oil Company did, to be able to sell electricity to the non-Midwest Oil Company plants and camps and towns around here and everything like that too. So,
wow, that is really interesting. That's really cool. Okay, we come back into this room. You've got an old lithograph machine.
Yep.
For making copies.
Yep. This is a 1974 model of the A.B. Dick mimeograph machine, and this is a 1910 model of an A.B. Dick mimeograph machine.
They don't really look all that much difference, other than the 1910 one's a little bit bigger.
Yeah, a little bit bigger and a little. I mean, it's a little more. I mean, you can see the mechanics of this. Quite a bit more. But yeah.
And then you've got somewhat of a military display.
Right. We're sure proud of our military folk, and so we try to honor them every time we get a chance. But yeah, we've got some military stuff here, not a lot.
Right.
But, we've got some Navy uniforms that were worn by a couple of guys from here, and the grandson of the older fellow donated those to the museum, and they're really a treasure. They're really a treasure. They were both in the Navy.
And then the helmet that has 1918 on it, so that must be World War I.
That was World War I.
And then you've got a bugle and a couple of medals.
Yep. Yeah, we got
certificates.
Yeah.
And looks like a couple of fire nozzles.
Yep. Yeah, that fire nozzle, actually I found down in where the town of Columbine was, and I was laying in a draw, and I dug it out of the side of the bank down there. And Columbine was a town in the field just south of here, about 4 miles. And anyway, they had their own fire department and everything down there, and it's a ghost town now.
Is there still buildings there?
No, there's no buildings. There's a few foundations left around. One thing to think about that is when this field was being built up and the oil companies were building camps for their employees, they were building houses for their employees to live in, because they wanted to bring these employees to bring their families out here, because a family man is much more apt to be a good worker than some young buck that just wants to run off and get drunk every night. And so they were building these houses for them, and these camps were built to last 20 years. So the houses were just set on timbers. They just lay down some timbers and build a house on it. And most of the houses here in Midwest are still that way. Most of them still just have a timber foundation under them. And
wow,
and, they're 100 years old.
And that's here in the town.
That's here in the town of Midwest. Yeah.
And so Midwest at one point in time was just a company town.
It was a company town. Yep, exactly.
Now, is it still company owns a lot of places here still?
No.
It's all been private.
It's all been privatized.
Okay.
Yeah, Amoco, when they had the field, they decided they were tired of being in a town business, so they sold the houses and they formed a city government here and everything like that. So
okay. Now I'm looking at a piece in this cabinet. He's got a cabinet that has a bunch of rocks, petrified stone, trees, and there's a petrified leaf.
Yeah.
and some other ammonites and just lots of neat rocks. But he's got a purse that looks like it's made out of chainmail. What is that? A purse made out of chainmail?
It is. That's exactly what it is.
Wow. I have never seen anything like that. Ruth White gave measuring tape and metal purse in 1910.
Yeah.
Or the circa is 1910.
Circa 1910. But that's exactly what it is.
I've never seen a metal purse. That's a really cool piece.
Isn't that neat?
We're looking at a purse that has a arch for the top that's made out of steel, and then into it is a bunch of chainmail, and the purse is probably 8 inches long and 4 or 5 inches wide, has a little chain on it. It's just a really neat little purse. You'd be able to see everything that was in it. It's a pretty tight chainmail. But wow, that is really, really cool.
And here's an 1854 saddle Bible. And
for carrying in your saddle?
For
in your
carrying in
saddlebags.
saddlebags. Yep.
1854.
Yeah, and it's, 3 inches wide and 5 inches tall.
Right, and about 2 inches thick.
About 2 inches thick.
Is that Old and New Testament? Or
This is a King James Version.
Wow.
Old and New Testament.
And I'll tell you, you better have a magnifying glass or some really good eyes, because that writing is small.
Yeah, that would be terrible. Try to read by campfire light, huh?
Oh, yeah, it would never happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. Reading it by sunlight, you'd have to have it 3 inches from your eyes.
Yeah, that's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
Really cool.
Yeah.
I wonder what kind of press that they would have made that off of.
That's a good question.
Because I don't know what kind of presses they had in the 1854,
1850s,
but you would have thought that, well, just trying to set that type
exactly
in the old printing presses would have been quite difficult.
Yeah, it would have.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
And then you've got a case here with a bunch of petroleum-related items. You've got a hard hat. You've got some oil cans. You've got some old oil matchbox car type things, and a fire. Pictures of an oil tank fire. Holy smokes.
Yeah, that was...
Was that here?
No, those pictures were from when the refinery, the oil, the tank farm in Casper burned. And it was lightning struck. And lightning, I believe, struck 2 of the tanks, set them on fire, and those fires
jumped over
to the next.
That one picture, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tanks, and we're talking 80,000 gallon tanks.
80,000 barrel.
80,000 barrel, not how many gallons are in a barrel?
42.
42 gallons in a barrel.
Yeah.
80,000. Oh.
Yeah.
How many days did that burn?
You know, I don't remember. It was a long time though. There just wasn't much they could do about it. Back in those days, they didn't have
adding water just makes it float.
Yeah, that's right, and run down the sides. They didn't have the chemical foams and stuff that we do today to put them out. I'm not sure how they did it. I really don't.
That is just amazing, and to lose that much oil.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that had to have been devastating to whatever company.
Yeah, that was the Franco refinery, and so.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is just, and it had to have melted the metal as it burned down.
Yeah,
to where,
as you can see, this tank here, you can see it's starting to crater on the right-hand side over there, starting to just sag down. And they just collapse in on themselves.
Well, yeah, but the oil would spill out and just the fire would just spread, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yep, they had big berms up around them.
Okay.
To contain them, but
wow.
Yeah. There's 42 barrels of oil. Or there's 42 gallons of oil in a barrel, but there's 48 gallons of water in a barrel. And that 6-gallon difference actually came from the Salt Creek oil field. They would fill an actual barrel with oil here, put it on a wagon, and haul it to Casper. Well, by the time they got it to Casper, there's only 42 gallons in it. So there's this big upset about, okay, you're not sending us 48 gallons of oil. Well, it's the evaporation and the light ends flashing off, the natural gas coming out of it, and so the oil kind of contracts on itself, And so that's the basis, that's the standard in the oil industry now, came from Salt Creek.
Okay.
When they were...
And what's a gallon of oil weigh? I know a gallon of water is 8 pounds.
A gallon of oil weighs about 6 pounds.
About 6 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay. So they couldn't weigh it. I mean.
Yeah, you couldn't do it by weight. You had to do it by volume.
And just between here and Casper.
Yeah.
It lost the 6 gallons.
Yeah. Of course, now we're talking. We did this in a wagon.
Right.
With no roads, and it would take them 3 or 4 days to get it.
Well, not only that, it'd be sloshing.
It'd be sloshing and bouncing and everything else. Yeah, and breaking that gas out of the liquids. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I'm learning a ton here.
Now,
if I can just retain half of what I'm learning, but I'm finding this totally fascinating. This is okay. And then over here, you've got some different household items. You've got an old Singer treadle machine and a washboard and an electric Singer and those are for pressing clothes.
Exactly. Yeah,
but I don't know what the thing's called.
Yeah,
it's easy. That's what it is. Is easy.
It's the Easy brand clothes press.
Okay.
And this one here, this is a big one, and this came out of the hotel that was here in town, and this was used to press linens.
Oh, okay.
The bed sheets and towels and all that kind of stuff. This smaller one here is a home version of it.
Okay.
And I remember growing up as a kid over in Ten Sleep, my grandmother had one of these in the living room.
Okay.
And she took in laundry and stuff like that.
My next door neighbor had one. My next door neighbor friend's dad was a milkman.
Oh.
And of course his clothes all had to be pressed for delivery and all that. Now, did they have pressed clothes for all of the oil workers too? I mean, were they in a uniform? Or?
No, they wore what they could buy. And but the press clothes and that type of thing were for the engineers and the foremans and the higher ups in the companies and that type of thing.
Well, it just amazes me when I look at old magazines. You got an old Mechanics Illustrated magazine, and they show the guy wearing his suit, working with and a tie, working with a lathe.
Exactly.
And you're going, what kind of an idiot wears a tie to a machine shop?
Exactly, yeah.
But they must have done it, or else they just posed for pictures. I don't know, but I didn't know if the oil field was a little bit more lax that way. Or...
no, we've got pictures of some of the engineers and stuff like that out here in the field, and yes, they have suit and tie and crisp creases in their slacks and everything like that.
But they were working in the office.
Yep, pretty much.
Didn't have to worry about getting oil stains.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And then you've got a really nice display of old cameras.
Yeah.
And clocks. And baseball gloves. Boy, some of those baseball gloves, or softball maybe. You got a couple old softballs, but those have to be really old.
Yep.
1920s maybe?
Yep, particularly the one on the left there was a fielder's mitt, and the one on the right was a catcher's mitt, and they are old. The oil companies back in the 20s, they had they all fielded a baseball team, and it was quite a rivalry between the oil companies. There was 53 different operators out here in prior to 1934. Here in the Salt Creek field.
Really?
Just in this field.
53 different operators.
Yeah, and they all fielded a baseball team, and there was quite a competition. And some of the more unscrupulous oil companies, to play on these teams, you had to be an employee of the company. Okay, so some of these oil companies were hiring professional baseball players as clerks or gophers or something like that, so that they were playing on these baseball teams, and so yeah, the baseball field was down underneath the hill here by the creek, and yeah, they fielded quite the teams back then.
Now, did they have basketball teams and some of that also?
Yeah, they did.
I know that a lot of the not oil fields, just companies that were around had different basketball teams or some of that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in the 20s, like I was saying, the oil companies were really trying to get married men to bring their families here. Well, when they brought their families here, they had to give something for the families to do. They couldn't just sit in a little 2-room shack all day long, all night long, waiting for the husband to come home. So the oil companies, and particularly the Midwest Oil Company, built hotels and restaurants and beauty parlors and game halls and a theater, big, huge theaters, a gorgeous theater, and churches and drugstores and just everything. Anything that somebody could get in San Francisco, they could get in Salt Creek also.
Wow.
Fresh oysters and seafoods and everything like that were shipped in on the train.
Isn't it amazing to look at the town now? And I'm not talking just Midwest. I'm talking every town in the state. Grable, Wyoming, where I live, is the same thing. You know, I mean, Empire Oil was there, and there was a bowling alley. There was all kinds of things. And now these communities have nothing.
Right.
I mean, they really do. When they say there's nothing to do, they're not really joking. But back in the 20s, they had everything.
They had everything, yeah.
And it's really interesting to see the old pictures of the main streets in these towns.
Yeah.
And now they're basically, I won't say they're ghost towns, but you know, Walmart's 50 miles away, 30 miles away.
Exactly.
And people don't shop local, and they have kind of ruined their own towns.
Exactly.
I guess you could say that, but not just that. We don't have the social structure that we had at that time. Churches are failing, lodges are failing. You know, the Masonic lodges and the Elks and the Lions and all of those are dwindling down to nothing.
Yeah, we used to have Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and everything out here, you know, years ago when I first came here and stuff, and there's not that anymore. You know, even the 4-H is inactive out here anymore.
Yeah, I mean, in our area too, you know, the 4-H isn't inactive, but it's just not, it's not booming.
Right.
You know, and I saw all of you had a really nice Boy Scout display out there with some, I'm sure that they were 1930s, 1940s patches and uniforms, and some of that stuff was pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Another thing that
We're okay.
the oil companies did, you know, back in the 20s, to keep everybody happy and content and wanting to stay here, they built golf courses and tennis courts and swimming pools and everything like that. There were 7 golf courses out here.
Really?
Yeah, and
well, I guess you had a lot of holes. You had 5,000 holes to hit balls down.
very true. But
and you could check the well and play golf.
And there you go. Yeah, chip one over to the next well. And that's right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. But the major camps, the big camps, all had a golf course and tennis courts and basketball courts, like you were mentioning, and there was swimming pools all through the field that were supplied by hot water wells here in the field. And so
I was just going to ask, were they supplied by water coming out of the ground?
Yep.
Smelled a little bit like sulfur?
Exactly. You bet.
But it was still warm.
It was warm. It's the same water basically as what's over in Thermopolis.
Okay.
And we've got Artesian Wells out here, and yeah, they had all these swimming pools and everything. One of the things about the golf courses that I think is just funny as heck is that, you know, during that time in the 20s and stuff, the fashion for women playing golf was with, you know, full-length long skirts. I mean, ankle-length skirts and everything.
Right.
And so they would be playing out there. Well, the oil field didn't shut down because you wanted to play golf. And there was a system of pumping that was called a central power. And it was a central unit with like a bull wheel on a concentric that had rods. And these rods ran across the ground on posts about 2 feet high. And they would just go back and forth across these rods to pump a well over there.
So we just went and did a hit and miss motor gathering in Twin Falls, Idaho.
Really?
And they were talking about one of these old pumpers that did that, and they were talking about how it had its central space and it would pump out, you know, 2-3 miles, they were saying, to pump the different oil wells.
Yeah.
But they had one of those hit and miss motors out there running.
Really?
Yeah.
One of the old Ajax.
Now, are they still using the hit and miss motors in this field?
Not in this field, no. We're all electrified here now.
Okay, I have a friend that works for a fairly large oil company, and he was doing roustabout service while he was in college, getting his geology degree, and he was just telling me that a lot of those wells in Oklahoma and stuff are still run with the hit and miss motors.
That's right, yeah. On a cold, clear night here, see, there's some small oil fields right around this one.
Okay.
On a cold, clear night, if you step outside, you can hear those things running out.
So they're still using them.
They're still using them outside of this field. There's a little private field just west of here. And
Really?
you can hear it out there popping and banging away all night long.
And now, do those have the long rods also?
No, there's a single engine on a single unit.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was just fascinating to me. I
Yeah.
had no idea that they would run rods from a stationary motor to be
Yeah.
able to pump
Yeah.
10 or 12 or 15 or
Yeah.
whatever wells.
Where's it at? Hanging up.
Okay,
right
we're
here.
standing in another room that has several pictures on the wall. He's looking for one in particular, but this room is full of different post hole diggers. And what is this? This is a centrifugal.
This is a centrifuge. Yeah, this is what we use to. They call it grind out an oil sample.
And what we're looking at here is something with a hand crank with 2 glass bulbs in it that fit down inside of a funnel. And when the hand crank is turned, this thing's going to spin at a high rate of speed. It's geared, and those little funnels go out vertical
Yeah.
or out horizontal.
Out horizontal.
They sit vertical, and then as you spin it, they go out horizontal in order to separate
Oil from water. To be pipeline grade oil, there can only be 0.3% BS&W, and BS&W stands for bad stuff in water,
Okay.
or another
Right.
word for
Right.
BS.
Stuff. Yeah. Okay.
And so that's what this was used for, is to spin out your oil samples to see if it was pipeline grade. If not, you recycled it and knocked more water and BS and stuff out of it. But yeah, this was a manual centrifuge to sample that oil with.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Again, I've never seen one of those. And what is this little furnace thing? It's got a thermometer on it. It looks like a little stove that's probably 8 inches high, kind of oblong, made out of copper. Looks like maybe you put a candle in the bottom. And yeah.
This was used to check the gravity and temperature of your oil. Put an oil sample in there.
Okay, you fill the little container that has a thermometer going down in it, and what's in here? Oh, is that a wick?
That's a wick.
Okay.
To wick oil up into the sample pot, and this would check the gravity and temperature of the oil, and using that with your 0.3% BS&W, then you got your grade of oil. How good of oil it is.
Whether it's the light or the heavy, or
light, heavy, and the API gravity of it is what it's called. We're producing about a 42 gravity oil out here right now, and 42 gravity is real good. I mean, the stuff we produce here is the premium stuff. It's not just pure oil. I mean, it's got all the good stuff in it that they make plastics and styrofoams and all these byproducts out of. Your paraffin candles, your wax candles, come from the oil.
Now that's something that people don't realize. When they start getting onto this green kick, they want to get rid of all the oil, they don't realize that they're going to be missing out on their candles, on their plastics. Their computers are not going to be manufactured anymore. They are not going to have anything, because everything is made from oil in some form or another.
Yeah, you won't have your fiberglass blades on for your wind turbines. You won't have a solar panel. It's mostly made out of oil. Just the insulation around the wire is made out of oil.
Right.
And their computers that they sit there and worship and all that kind of stuff, you will not have a computer without oil. Period.
It's making everything go that we have as far as luxuries at this point in time, and I don't know what they think they're going to replace it with.
I don't know. Go back to beef tallow candles, I guess.
Those actually burn quite nice, but
as long as it's not an old bowl, they kind of smell a little bad, when they. But they do work.
They do work.
Yeah, but we can all live in caves and burn our beef tallow candles and eat our jackrabbits and.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Okay, now you got a box over here that has several different core samples.
Yeah. These are the cores of the sand producing formations out here. And this is the one that we primarily produce out of, the Second Wall Creek sand. And as you can see, I mean, that's solid rock.
Right.
And we're producing 11,000 barrels of oil a day out of that solid rock.
It's seeping out of that solid rock.
Yeah.
Now, are they doing fracking in these fields, or they're just doing the pumping of the air into them?
We do frack some out here. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We call them baby fracks, so it only takes them like 15 minutes to frack a well out here because they're so shallow. They can't really run super high pressures because it just lift the ground up if they went very high. And yeah, they frack this and it would crack this rock.
Okay, right.
And let the oil seep into those cracks and then run into the well bores.
But it's amazing that oil would come out of something that hard.
Exactly, yeah.
And just keep seeping out.
Yeah, for 100
years.
Yeah, for 100 years.
Wow.
And
wow.
You know, when they discovered this field, they figured it'd be done in 20 years. They'd have all the oil and have to leave.
Really?
And so they did that for a while, and then it just kept producing and producing. And then in 1960, they started water injection, where they were injecting water into the ground to pressurize the formation again and to push oil from an injection well through this rock to a producing well. And that really gave us a real big boost in production. It got down to where in 2004 we were only making 3,500 barrels of oil a day out here. And then Anadarko bought the field, and then they started CO2 injection, jumped it up to 15,000 barrels of oil a day.
Wow.
And we're at 11,000, hitting 11,500 a day now. So, I mean, you know, 20 years from 1908 is they figured it'd be dead. And
still getting oil.
Yeah, and Anadarko figured, see, most projects like that, particularly oil field projects, when they go into something, they forecast over 20 years because that's just about as long as it's going to last. Well, Anadarko took this step out when they did the CO2 project, and they said it's going to last for 40 years. So, I mean, 40-year life of this project. So I want to see how long it really goes. Is it going to go 60 years or 100 years more? And then what's after that? After we've gone through primary recovery, and then they steam flooded, or excuse me, gas. They injected gas into the ground to pressurize the formation. And then they did water, and now they're doing CO2. Okay, so what's the next big thing that is going to make this field last another 40 years?
Well, see, and over in Grable, they had a shallow well there, and they had a company come in that dug a mine underneath the formation, and they were allowing that oil to drip down into the mine, and they were recovering that way. Now, I know that they're not doing that anymore, so it must not have been super successful, but I think they had 6 or 7 different oil field mines in the Wyoming, South Dakota area, if I remember right.
Yeah, I believe the oil field mine, the oil mine up in between here and KC is still operating.
Is it?
Yeah, I believe it is, and that's us in the Sundance Formation.
Okay.
Making Sundance oil. We produce.
That's an interesting concept to me.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You walk underneath it and let
Rains
it rain down
oil
on top of you. Yeah. Yeah. We produce Sundance oil here also, and we're producing from 7 formations right now. And Sundance oil is diesel fuel.
Okay.
One of our engineers, back before Anadarko bought the place, he had a diesel pickup, and he said he wanted 50 gallons of Sundance oil. So we went and gathered him up 50 gallons of Sundance oil, and he poured it in his truck and drove away. He said it smoked a little more than usual and didn't quite have the power that, you know, pump fuel had.
But straight oil.
But straight Sundance oil is diesel. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's some oil wells to the east of us out here that you can just drive your car up to and fill them up.
Really?
It's that pure.
But you better add some coloring, otherwise they'll give you a ticket.
That's right. That's right.
So, wow. Just so much stuff to see here. Old fire hydrants. We were just talking about these.
Yeah?
The old fire extinguisher
Fire bombs.
balls.
Yeah, the fire bombs.
What all do you know about those?
You know, over in Tinsley, my grandfather had the Green Tea Garage, a Texaco station, and he had those lined up all through the garage and in their house and everything like that. And I actually watched him use it one time. He caught a school bus on fire, and so he threw it at that, and then we all ran outside and shut the door and went back in a little while later. The fire was out.
And what we're talking about here is there's a bracket that hangs on the wall, and there's a ball that's about 4 inches in diameter with a little knob that comes down on the bottom. Looks like maybe a maraca, or what do they call those little instruments that have the little shaky things in it. Looks a little bit like a stubby one of those, and it's got a liquid in it. What was the liquid called? Do you remember, Linda?
Carbon tetrachloride.
Carbon tetrachloride.
Yeah.
And what it did is it sucked the oxygen out of the air. And they were quite common in the 20s, 30s, maybe even into the 40s. And I've been into a few different houses. I'm a flooring installer.
Oh.
And I've been into a couple of basements and different places where I've seen these things.
Really?
But they were outlawed because they sucked the oxygen out. And if you stood inside of the building instead of running out and closing the door, like you said, it sucks all the oxygen out and you aren't breathing anymore.
Yeah. Carbon tet is a real cancer agent too. And so they just, somebody told me the other day that they're starting to make things like that again. They just don't have carbon tet in them.
Somebody tried to sell us some fire extinguishers 10, 15 years ago that were made with halon.
Halon,
And they said that halon took the oxygen out
that's
also.
right.
And that they were really effective. But that was just one guy trying to sell them, and I haven't seen any halon fire extinguishers since. I don't know if they ever took off or not. But.
Yeah, you'll find halon in particularly in the tech industry, because the halon doesn't affect the computers and stuff like that, where a typical fire extinguisher agent does. And so the halon is used in those areas.
Okay. Oh, wow. I've never seen those either. Jerk and perk poles.
Yeah.
Found on the Oregon Trail in 1995. And these must have been for oxen.
These were for the wagon trains, yep.
Yeah. And it's a post that's, about 8-10 foot long with a hook on one end. And I guess it's got a hook on both ends. And what were those used for? Do you know?
Well, yeah, they were, in this picture I have out here in the main room.
Going the right way?
Yep. On the jerk line teams. You had the.
So these were for horses, not for.
Well, they used them on oxen also.
Okay.
But any string team like that, and
when he's talking about a team, he's got a picture here. I'll bet it's got the 40 horses or 40 mules. Are they hauling oil? It looks like it's just got a sheep wagon in the back. But
they're actually hauling some engines and stuff on here, and then the sheep wagon in the back was for the teamsters to eat and sleep in on the way from Casper to here, because it'd take them 3 or 4 days to get here.
Are all those horses, or is there a couple of oxen in the back with big horns?
No,
it's really hard to see.
They're just horses. These two big whites are the wheel horses.
Okay.
The horses right in front of the wheels of the wagon. As you can see the wheel of the wagon right there.
Right.
And these were draft horses. The rest of these were just typical horses. But these two and these two were the most trained horses in the string. And what they would do is... if they had some young horses, or they just brought some Mustangs off the range or something like that, they would put them beside one of these older horses that had been pulling for a while. And so that the horse that it was beside would keep the new one in line, teach him how to pull.
Right.
The one in the front and behind him would do the same thing. The one behind him, if this new horse wasn't pulling his weight, he'd just reach up and bite him.
Really?
Or the one in front, if he was messing around and jerking the harnesses and stuff, he'd just reach back and kick him.
It just made life miserable for everybody if they weren't all pulling together.
Got him shaped up, yeah.
You've got a couple of really neat horse team pictures here.
Yeah.
This one right up above it, again, has a sheep wagon in the back and a big piece of machinery.
Yeah,
and a bunch of pipe.
Yeah, that's a star drilling machine.
Okay.
And and that was a brand name of a drilling machine. And the pipe on the back is their drill pipe,
Right.
and everything like that. And you can't see it in here, but there's another wagon.
Okay,
back
yeah, I
there,
can kind of see it.
And he's pulling the boiler, because they were all steam engines then, and he's pulling the boiler and bringing it along so that they can drill a well.
Wow.
And again, the sheep wagon was for the workers to sleep and cook in.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is just cool.
Yeah, and this is a map of the field and the major camps in it, and of course Midwest right here in the middle.
Right.
And these are the bigger camps. Lewis Camp was a large one. Over here's Canadian Camp. Down here's the town of Columbine that I talked about earlier.
Right.
And outside of the field was Salt Creek. Outside of the field was Five Tribes, Edgerton, and Hollywood. And to live in one of these camps, you had to work for that company. If you didn't work for any of the oil companies, if you were a contractor or something like that, you had to live in one of these outlying towns.
Okay.
And down at Salt Creek, there was also a town down there called Snyderville. And Snyderville was the party town. Had dance halls and saloons and that type of thing in it. And the field was a dry field. You couldn't have alcohol in the field. But Salt Creek, Snyderville, Lavoie, Hollywood and Edgerton, Five Tribes not so much, but Hollywood was also where the dance halls were.
Okay.
You know, and houses of ill repute and that type of thing. And I own Hollywood now. That's where I keep my...
You went and bought all the houses of ill repute. I see how that works.
That's where I keep my miniature herd of miniature cattle.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah. But
Wow.
anyway, throughout the field, in 1927, Midwest alone had 17,000 people living in it.
What?
And in the entire field, there was 59,000 people. So the population of Casper lived here.
Yeah.
In five.
And now there's a population of what?
400.
400 in the whole field?
Yeah, between Midwest
Wow.
and Edgerton, I think we're close to 500. But yeah, you know.
See, and I've always wondered, Wyoming has their license plates listed by population. And I would have thought always that Cheyenne would have been number one, but Casper is number one, or Natrona County. And now I see why that would be, because even though Casper and Natrona County is not bigger than what Cheyenne and that, it's Albany County, correct?
Laramie.
Laramie County. Okay, I get confused because Laramie's in Albany County.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
But I've always thought it's really weird that Natrona County has the number one on their license plate when they should be a lot smaller than Cheyenne.
Yeah.
But when they were doing all that, if you had 59,000 people just in this camp, along with the, 60,000 people in Casper?
Yeah. There is now. At that time, there was only a couple thousand.
Really?
Yeah.
So Casper was the baby town.
Yeah, Casper was a baby town then. Yeah.
Even though it's known as the oil city.
Yeah. At that time, they were building the refineries, the big refineries. The railroad was there, and that type of stuff. You know, so it was growing pretty hard, but it had nothing close to the population of this oil field.
That's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
When you're driving here and you're seeing what's here versus wow.
Yeah.
It's just it's fascinating.
It is. Yeah. It surely is.
But you have towns like Encampment and some of the other towns that, you know, when the copper was going big, they had lots and lots of people there too.
Yeah.
And now it's got 400, 500 people.
Right. Yeah, the Hannah Elk Mountain area, you know, with the coal mines and everything. And
yeah, Hannah, same thing. And,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, and that's some pictures of the camps that I was talking about.
Okay.
This was Dutch Camp. It was the first camp, and interesting enough, it was the last camp. It was the last one to be torn down, and it was right on the edge of town over here. In fact, you can see Midwest back there in the back. That's Midwest up there.
And you've got all kinds of oil rigs and stuff running right in town.
Right in town, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's one right there.
It looks like they're drilling right in people's backyards.
Exactly, yep. Yeah, there's one one right there, just across the street in that lot right there
Okay.
where that trailer house is.
Wow.
And there's one right on this side of the building too. I mean, right here in town.
And it's working?
No, they're plugged now. They're plugged now. But
Man, you've got some really cool pictures in here.
this old gentleman up here is the one that started the whole thing. His name is Cy Iba, and he was a gold prospector. And he was headed to California in 1849 to go out there, and get him some gold and get rich. And as he came through Casper on the Oregon Trail, he heard about oil seeps up here, so he come up and take a look.
Now, when you talk about oil seeps, you're talking about oil on top of the ground.
Exactly, oil just bubbling up out of the ground.
And they used to bring their wagons by and grease the wheels and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's an oil field called Bonanza that I think was the same type of thing over in the Bighorn Basin.
Right. Yep. And then down by Lander down there was the big one also.
Okay.
Down on the Paposia over there. Yeah. But Cy Iba is the one that he came back then in 1895 and started making claims out here. And just northwest of town out here was what's called Jackass Springs. And Jackass Springs was an oil spring, just coming out of the ground. Well, he laid claim to that. In fact, through the years, he laid claim to most of the field and then pretty much lost everything through litigation, sold some of it, just lost some of it. Didn't keep his leases up and that type of thing. But he kept the 80 acres up there, and it's still called the Iba 80. And the Iba 80 is the richest 80 acres in the United States.
Really?
More money's been made off of that 80 acres than any other 80 acres in the United States. And
wow.
He died before the real boom happened out here in the 20s.
I was going to say, did he know what he was?
He knew what was going on. He knew what the potential was. And that's why he was trying to lay claim to so much out here, and why he was fought so hard. He died a pauper because of lawyers.
Wow.
Trying to fight and retain all this. But they did retain the 80 acres. He died a pauper. Mrs. Iba died a millionairess.
Wow.
She died in, I believe, in 1937. And she was a millionairess. Mr. Iba's great-great-granddaughter stopped by here a few years ago, and I was talking to her. Really interesting. She said, in that picture, one of them's missing. The black sheep of the family isn't in there. He's never listed anywhere or anything like that, but there's another one. There's another son.
Really?
And but she still, of course, has mineral rights in the Iba 80. Of course, it's been spread out through the years, and everybody gets a little piece of it and stuff. And her husband asked me, well, what happened, 10 years ago that our royalty checks went from $200 a month to $2,000 a month? And I said, well, when did that happen? Well, in 2006. Oh, yeah, that's when CO2 flood happened, and we tripled or by 5 times the production out here. And so anyway, she was real interesting to talking about the family and everything like that.
I'll bet it was.
It was real interesting.
Wow.
Huh.
Very.
This museum is just absolutely fascinating. You've got so many things here that are oil related, along with so many things that aren't oil related.
Right.
And it's just such a neat mixture, and it's open. It's almost more like going to an antique store.
Yeah.
I love going to antique stores because you can get up close and personal to the stuff.
Get up and touch it.
And touch it and stuff. And I don't know that I really want to touch anything here, but it's where you can bend over and look at it. It's not just all in a case.
Right.
And this is just super that you came down and opened this up for us. This
Yeah.
is I had no idea this was here.
Yeah, and this building was built as nurses' housing.
Okay.
The town hall and everything there to the south of us, that big long building, was a hospital built by the Midwest Oil Company. And it was a premier hospital in the region. And so they built this for the nurses to live in. There was 8 nurses lived in this building.
I was wondering why it was so divided up room-wise.
Yeah. And there's been some walls taken out and everything to make the bigger rooms. But then when the hospital couldn't make it anymore, the oil company took that building over as offices, and they moved a medical clinic over here. And then this was a medical clinic up until 1992.
Which explains the room that we're entering right now.
Exactly. Yep.
You've got a barber shop, it looks like, a small barber chair and a sink.
Yeah, this is old Harry O'Connor's barber shop over in Edgerton. And this was Doc Scheidler. He was a dentist.
Okay.
That's his chair and
You
everything.
got an old chair and the sink.
And Doc Scheidler and his wife Lucille.
Okay.
And this was Doc Scheidler's tool cabinet.
Okay. And we're looking at an oak, I think it's oak.
Yep.
Cabinet that, oh man, it opens up and has 15 drawers for all his little tools. Really nice hinges on it. A couple of other drawers, a mirror. There must be for drawers, like in, oh man, he just pulled out a little drawer that has 10 little tiny compartments that maybe he put teeth in there or
Maybe.
something.
I don't
Just
know.
they're only like 2 inches by 2 inches, and the drawer's only 12 inches, 10 inches, and maybe 2 inches high, and goes back in, 10 inches or 12 inches. Tons of little compartments, and these cabinets. The edge of this cabinet, like a dresser cabinet, it's kind of tall, but the corners of it open up to where you can hang things. Boy, this is just a fascinating cabinet.
Yeah.
Somebody was very talented woodworking wise in order to make this.
Yeah.
Really talented. Hey, Linda, come here and take a look at this cabinet. As long as he's opening it and showing it, you need to come see this. And no, I won't buy one for you.
I was looking at
I don't think I could afford what a cabinet
It's
like this would
beautiful.
cost. Well, look at this. Look at the way that opens.
That's neat.
And then we'll have pictures of this thing posted on the Facebook page so that you can see some of the work with this, the craftsmanship with this cabinet.
Put a lot of stuff
This
in
thing
there.
is just amazing.
Yeah.
Does this table pull out?
Yes, it does. This.
Oh, isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's neat.
Yep.
This is just amazing. I don't think I've ever seen an antique cabinet like this.
No, me either.
Did you see the little compartments in like this drawer? Look at that. Just really, really interesting. Just amazing.
That's round so you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then did you see the little tool compartments like in this one?
Yeah, that's cool. Look at the hinges
Wow.
though.
The
Yeah,
hinges
isn't
are
that
so
something?
ornate.
Oh,
Yeah.
man, those are beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, and the mirror opens for more.
Wow, look at that. Wow. How fun.
Okay, so I'm assuming that the dentist did not have any memory problems, because if I had a cabinet like that, I wouldn't know where anything was.
Exactly.
Too many holes and places to
Very
hide
nice.
stuff. Wow.
And over in Edgerton, Harry O'Connor's barber shop and Doc Schuyler's dentist office were right next to each other. And as the years went on, they got to be my age now and stuff like that. And they just didn't do a lot. But if you needed a haircut or if you're having trouble with your tooth, we just go next door to the bar and get them out of there. They
They were working on their anesthesia.
Yeah, well, now Doc Scheidler didn't drink though,
Okay.
but Harry O'Connor would tip a few. And so if you went to get a haircut and you got him out of the bar, you don't really know what kind of a haircut you was going to get. Doc Scheidler was always pretty good, but yeah.
And then you've got a couple of the old wooden, big-wheeled wheelchairs here, an old hospital bed, bed pans, water pitchers, and all of that kind of stuff. Just like what I'm assuming about a 1930s, 1940.
1937 is the age of that bed.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah, this was the maternity ward when this was a clinic.
Okay.
I know two guys that were born in this room.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of them still lives out here just
Wow.
north of town a ways. Uh-huh.
That's awesome.
Then we come on over to this other side. You've got a potty chair and all kinds of crutches. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Scale. What was this? The operating room?
This was, the exam and surgery room. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep,
You've got a table here that does not look like it'd be comfortable at all.
Solid steel. And
I'd say that this must have had something to do with Maternity Ward too.
Yeah.
It has a set of stirrups for the legs.
Yeah. Yep, that's right.
And then what is that thing called? I can't remember. It's a heat chamber.
Yeah,
for sterilizing tools.
Autoclave.
Oh boy, I'm glad somebody came up with that because I wouldn't have.
Yep, me too. I was drawing a blank. Yeah. Yep, that's the autoclave.
And that's got to be like a 1940s model.
It looks like it, doesn't it?
1930s model. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a cot. And what in the world is this thing?
Those are traction bars.
Oh.
For
these have wire, like 1/4-inch wire stock that comes down into a round leather deal. The wire stock's about 3 foot long, so that must have fit around your thigh, around your thigh and around your foot.
This was for a child to pull traction on a leg.
Okay.
And this would attach around with belts around your hips and everything like that, and then you'd tie your foot to here and pull traction on it.
Oh, that just had to be comfortable.
Oh,
yeah. Nothing.
Yeah, and then this one here was for an adult, of course.
Wow. This old medical stuff is just scary.
Look at these braces.
Yeah. Some old leg braces that are just heavy. It's actually fairly thick iron, or not iron, but tin, and doesn't look anything like the comfort that people have nowadays.
That's right.
Along with a lot of old medicine cabinets up there or medicine bottles and stuff in the medicine cabinet.
You got your official government snake bite kit.
Oh, that's cool.
Has that got the little suction cup and all that stuff in it? Or wow.
Right there.
Yeah, and they say that suctioning's not the way to do things now.
Yeah.
But I guess the government said it was at one point.
Yeah, at one
you got
point
a little
in time.
tourniquet.
Yeah, got a tourniquet and some
grease,
inhalants.
Oh. And I would assume that rattlesnakes were probably an issue out here.
They are. Yep, you bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the type of, you've got a box of rattles here. That one's got what? 15 buttons?
Yeah.
Wow.
I got this one over.
That's about 3 inches long, 2 inches long.
That's a big one.
Yeah, got this one over at the homestead. The geese had it surrounded.
Really?
Until I got there, and then they backed off and let me take care of him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, now these are the prairie rattlers.
These are
so
prairie
they
rattlers.
don't really get much over 3 feet.
Yeah, and that's
3.5 feet.
That's a big one.
That is a big one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Exciting days.
Oh man.
Oh, now the sink is interesting because did you have to pump? There's 2 little pedals down here on the floor.
Oh.
One of them runs hot water and the other one runs cold. And that must have been so you didn't have to touch the handles.
Have to touch it while you was washing your hands when you was going to do surgery and stuff.
That's
Now, are
cool.
they still doing this in hospitals, or is this just kind of a fluke thing with this one?
I don't know.
And it still works.
It still works, yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just push down with your foot on the hot or the cold and wash your hands and not have to touch anything before surgery.
Yep, that's right.
That's neat. I have to
Yeah.
That is really interesting. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
How fun is that?
Huh. And then we come back here to this room.
This is the school room.
The school room. You've got pictures of the football team in 1925.
The first ever night football game in the United States.
First ever night. And that's because you had your own electrical power.
Exactly, yeah.
And you were able to, did they have lights all through the field too? Or just on the football field?
Just on the football field mostly. They had some lights around like their plants and stuff like that. But it's kind of a crooked thing that the Midwest Oil Company did when they lit the football field. Because back in those days, in the 20s, the work schedule was just can to just can't. When you can just see, you go to work, and when you just can't see anymore, you went home. Well, the guys that were working out there had boys playing football, and they wanted to go see watch the boys play football. the oil company didn't want to let half the guys go
Right.
watch a football game. So, okay, so well, when nobody else is working, we'll light the football field so you can go watch your boys play football.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I wonder how the other schools coming from Casper or other places felt about playing at night. It was probably a pretty neat experience for them.
Yeah. Midwest played Casper, the first ever lighted football game
And that was first lighted in the nation?
in the nation.
In the nation.
Some people say nation, some people say west of the Mississippi. There's still some arguments about that. I go with nation. And
You know, it's just so cool that these towns had so much going for them. And we were just talking about that earlier, Basin, where we're from. It was the county seat for all of the Bighorn Basin at one time. Cody and now there's 5 counties there.
right.
But they were one of the first places in either the state or the nation to have gas lights for all of the houses. They had Alfalfa Palace that they packed up and took to the state fair in Douglas like in 1910 by rail.
Yeah.
I mean, these towns had things going for them.
That's right. Yeah.
And now it's so sad to see where we are.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we all have our technology, our cell phone, and our television, but we don't have a community.
Right. Exactly.
The community's gone.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Like the town of Midwest, the Midwest Oil Company, of course, provided the housing, but they provided heat for the house with a steam generating plant here in town.
Okay.
They provided electricity, of course. They owned the power plant.
Right.
And they provided water from the hot water well to water your yards with and everything like that. Everything was provided. The interior of your house was painted one year. The next year, the exterior of the house was painted by the oil company. Everything was taken care of for them.
Wow.
And as you can see, in 1925, just the Midwest grade school had 1,040 students.
The Midwest grade school.
Just the grade school. That's not counting the high school.
And we're looking at a picture in front of the high school that looks kind of like it may have been taken with a bit of a fisheye lens. And there is a herd of kids. I mean, over 1,000.
1,040 kids there. Yeah.
Just.
And that's not counting the school at Salt Creek, or there were some other small schools. Canadian Camp had a small school, and Lewis Camp had one. And, so...
Wow.
That's amazing.
But, if there's 59,000 people out here, figure half of them were kids.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Especially if they're pushing for families to come out and some of that type of stuff.
Yep, exactly.
This is just amazing.
Yeah.
Just absolutely amazing. So are we missing anything?
I think we've...
Kind of covered the museum. It seems like we've hit all the places.
Yeah.
And this is, I had no idea, Everett. I just had absolutely no idea that this place existed. I am just totally stunned. I have learned so much because I'm not in the oil industry. I just don't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
You've explained so much. And anybody that's come in this direction and passes up this museum is really missing out. I've just been fascinated with you. I've been fascinated with the museum. When this comes out, we will have pictures on Facebook so that people can take a look at some of what's going on. I don't want to give it all away with pictures. I want you guys to come see this because this is just a wonderful museum. And I guess that when people show up here, you're here to take them through?
You bet. I'll do guided tours, or I'll let you wander and answer questions if you yell one out. I'm pretty easy that way.
And easy as far as getting a hold of and showing up here to take care of this.
Yeah.
I mean, we're now pushing 7 o'clock. We've been here for an hour and 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And I have just been enjoying the heck out of this museum and enjoying the heck out of the visit with you. So anyway, I do appreciate your time. Again, you have a website?
We do not have a website. I'm working on getting it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as far as contact, just look up Salt Creek Museum.
Yeah, Salt Creek Oilfield Museum or Town of Midwest.
Town of Midwest will have it listed too.
They'll have it listed also, yeah.
Okay. And he's got books here about the oil field that are here to purchase. This is just been absolutely wonderful, and I so appreciate your time.
Well, I sure appreciate you coming by. This has been fun.
It has been. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
So I usually finish up with a statement that the world is full of wonder, and people need to get out and explore, see what's out here, enjoy what's out here.
That's right.
And the past is just as interesting as the present. And everybody have an absolutely wonder-filled day.
All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?